Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of Cabot, Cove, Chaps. We're still doing them. I'm joined by Nightbringer.
Here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny indeed. The episode is My Johnny Lies Over the Ocean.
See, my references are good.
Obviously referring to the song. I don't think it bears any other reference or impact on the actual episode.
Not in the slightest.
But so just to start, I would say this episode was definitely better than the last one.
Ooh.
But did what I hate the most in Murder She Wrote episodes.
I felt like the episode, the murder and the whole background for that felt profoundly weak to me.
Yes.
But I do think it did some of the hallmarks of Murder, She Wrote that we've come to just love is everything's related to family.
So this episode starts with a dream sequence, and I was honestly confused. Obviously, they Vaselined up the camera, so it was all nice and soft focus. Right, but it kept on changing where it was. So I was really confused as to what this sequence was meant to be. Like at first, I thought she was being spied on or stalked as she's doing all this stuff.
To me, it reminded me of the dream setup of one of the movies. Was it National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation or something, where he has the dream sequence looking out the window at somebody jumping in the pool? I don't know. I felt like I was supposed to reference that, and I got completely different vibes.
Well, it was clearly meant to indicate that we were watching something that we're not normally watching as we watch Murder, She Wrote, right?
Yeah,
with their because again, it was just Vaseline smeared on the side of the lens. But obviously, it starts with her in the bathing suit. So I was kind of like, is she being watched? Is she being stalked?
Right.
But then it kept on moving throughout the house. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense if you're meant to be like viewing this through the eyes of a stalker. So then, obviously it's revealed at the end when she wakes up that she was having a nightmare, because what we need to be told is that her husband, or was it just boyfriend? It was husband, right?
Husband.
Had committed suicide some time ago.
I honestly thought they were putting her up to be a sex figure, a sex icon of whoever was going to be doing the murdering. That's what that opening sequence felt like to me.
Well, no, that's what I mean. It kind of felt like it was a stalkering thing, but it didn't make sense that the camera just kept on abruptly changing angles, and then also being in the house where she would clearly be like, if it was meant to be the point of view of the stalker, she would have seen him. Right. That, like when it was outside, it made sense. Maybe long telephoto lens or whatever.
But what if he had completely hidden himself using Vaseline?
I mean, the one in the house, I think he would have had to have been about, 2 foot tall and standing in a plant pot to be able to hide?
No. The Vaseline helps make you invisible, and he just accidentally got some on the camera.
Ah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I don't think the Vaseline was to make him invisible. But the accidentally on the camera, I can agree with. But
then are we sure it was Vaseline?
It wasn't the best opening scene. And we're then kind of introduced to the fact that she is in a hospital. Clearly, it's a mental hospital. She is not coping well with her husband's suicide, which is fair enough. And then we're introduced to Jessica Fletcher's brother.
Okay, wait. Was that the brother that? Because they also show later him in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Okay, no, never mind. I follow. I'm stupid. Yep.
It's the brother who is talking to the psychiatrist who sets up the whole premise of the episode, which is they're going on a cruise.
Yep.
What I did miss is that he wasn't going on the cruise with them, because I was honestly looking forward to some some more family interaction, like brother sister type stuff.
I did catch that he wasn't going on the cruise even before they got like the opening. Her being with her father wasn't going to help get her out of the mind space as much as her being with her aunt as a girls' trip would.
Yeah, I guess. And yes, and really, and this is what I really didn't like about this episode, because, all right, I think we've given up trying not to do spoilers right at the start and actually going it through piece by piece. So, the thing that I hate when Murder She Wrote does is when it does a murder halfway through an episode.
Yes.
And by halfway through, I think it's probably around what, the 32 minute mark.
Yeah, it was closer to
Right.
3/5 to
So
3/4 of the way.
what we're trying to investigate first. So, and I don't know if they did the gaslighting in reference to, because I think Angela Lansbury was in the film Gaslight.
Yes, it was
Um,
1944. It was her
so
first film, actually.
okay, I didn't know that.
Trivia.
But yeah, I don't know. So basically, Johnny, the husband, has committed suicide. The niece, yet another niece, is going on a cruise, Gil's trip with Jessica Fletcher. And then while they're on the cruise, somebody is gaslighting her to make her think she's crazy and that Johnny is still alive. And blah, 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 blah.
Or maybe even just being haunted by his ghost.
Haunted.
Something, anything that she's no longer
whatever,
saying.
just, but you know. And really, if that was the case, the only, and I mean the only viable suspect, even though they tried to convince you there were so many more, was the psychiatrist. Because it was never going to be the brother. Right? And they tried so hard to justify that the other people could be potential perpetrators, but it would make no sense.
I was more than willing to buy into someone having secret knowledge, and we got rid of the psychiatrist so quickly that I kind of wrote
Yes,
him off as a character.
but this is what I mean. He is the only one that would have made sense because he's the only one who realistically knew that they were going on this cruise. The other people they set up, apart from possibly towards the end where they set up the woman who was actually murdered, everyone else knowing that they were going on this cruise would have made zero sense.
Yeah, there is absolutely zero explanation for why anyone else would know they were going on the cruise. And I just kind of wrote that down to bullshit storytelling.
Well, apart from the person who actually worked on the cruise ship, I guess she could have seen the passenger list.
And I liked that one
Before. So yes, she was kind of a viable suspect, but the two secretaries made no sense. How would they know Jessica Fletcher was going to be on it?
The whole thing with them just felt peculiar.
It was. I think they were there for a little bit of comic relief.
So was Ramon.
But there was so much comic relief. So was Leslie Nielsen as the captain. There was so much comic relief in this episode that it seemed really, really odd.
Yeah.
Honestly, like this was an incredibly light-hearted episode. I don't know if they thought, oh, we're dealing with suicide, we have to keep it light. Even though they weren't really dealing with suicide. That was just mentioned and done pretty much.
Yeah, that was just
straight away.
I was fully ready for them to have absolutely horrendous takes on suicide. I was ready to be annoyed.
I was waiting for it as well. But you know that wasn't the point. Was it was this gaslighting, and so yeah. So to me, when they were setting up the there was never going to be a murder, you know, because for the first 30 almost 40 minutes, you don't think there's going to be a murder. It's okay. Someone is trying to fuck with the niece's head. Possibly it was a failed murder attempt with the stairs.
Yeah, that was that initially with that scene. I was like, okay, this is a really weak murder.
Yes,
and now we're gonna dig into.
So and yeah, so I mean, honestly, none of this episode makes sense story wise. But I enjoyed the trappings around the story in this episode. apart from, was Ramon the one who said, "Do you want to see my hookie coochie?" or whatever it was?
Yes, weirdly, though I will admit, Ramon hitting on Jessica Fletcher by referring to her as the sister of
Oh, I
of the crazy
mean,
niece was that's hallmark.
yes, and the fact he was hitting on everyone. I don't know if he actually sleeps with them or if it's purely going for tips. I don't know what his actual plan was or is.
It could just be how he gets his rocks off too, though.
Yeah, it could be. But again, a character who was completely unnecessary.
Yeah,
Right. And again, for an episode where there was so much comic relief already added, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. There was
I
then.
did enjoy the physical comedy of Jessica at the end, though.
So I think. Let's talk about characters that didn't make a lot of sense. So the secretaries, again, I think were pure comic relief. Ramon,
Yeah.
I think, was pure comic relief. Setting the niece up with another guy, what was the point of that?
And that honestly felt really tone deaf of Jessica to do. Like
It did.
I don't think Jessica would be that tone deaf.
It's a funny interaction, and like if there had been time passed and the niece seemed more open to this idea,
Yeah.
right? Then yes, I can see Jessica Fletcher doing that, right?
But she's literally still carrying around her husband's suicide note that she's
carrying
not letting
around the suicide note. Obviously, carrying around a lot of grief and a lot of blame.
And just getting some good dicking by some school teacher is not going to fix that.
You know, and the other thing was, it was just the first person who showed any interest in her. Jessica Fletcher was like, "Yep, that's the one."
Exactly.
Right? So it just seemed odd. I think they were trying to possibly suggest that he was another potential suspect in all of this.
They did a shit job of that.
Because what was never really explained until quite late on with this whole Johnny thing is why somebody was trying to make the niece feel crazy or possibly murder her over this Johnny thing. Right? I think it's Jessica Fletcher who just asks flat out, is there anybody you can think of who blames you for the suicide?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? And I think that was it. That is why they were doing it. And it, I don't know. I mean, yeah.
It does seem the only valid reason, though, to be giving her this gaslighting.
Well, I was wondering if they were gonna suggest that she was rich in her own right, and it was going to be a way to, and then maybe if she's declared, insane. But then the only possible person you could go with that angle would have been Jessica Fletcher's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty convinced Murder, She Wrote is never going to say that Jessica Fletcher comes from a family where there's rotten eggs.
Oh, no.
Right? So that kind of approach to me was off the table straight away. Leslie Nielsen as the captain was also relatively pointless.
Apparently, in the Poseidon Adventure, a 1972 movie, Leslie Nielsen was the captain of that ship as well. And there's speculation on the wiki that the casting director must have seen that and then did that. And that's weak.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I also know that, because again, I think this was done by the Columbo people. Leslie Nielsen had been in at least one Columbo episode. So he would have been known to the production company who was making this.
The secretaries apparently go on later to co-star again as secretaries in Doogie Howser.
Well, there you go. But so Leslie Nielsen, I think, was meant to take the place of the detective.
Yes.
In this episode,
and he did a bad job of doing that.
Very bad job of a detective, but he is just a ship's captain, right? And I enjoyed the interactions between Jessica Fletcher and the captain, right? I especially like the one where Jessica Fletcher makes sure she doesn't come with her to talk to the secretaries by saying, "You're such an intimidating figure."
Yes.
Right? That That made me laugh.
What angle was Jessica trying to go with when she was talking to the secretaries, asking about how bad the ship was? I knew obviously why she didn't want him with them was because how she was going to ask questions. It wasn't going to be straightforward like Leslie Nielsen had assumed. But
Yeah.
what angle was she trying to go for? Because she's talking about how shit her room is.
I don't know. Obviously the ultimate goal of that line of questioning was to work out why they were on this cruise.
Right.
Right.
I just didn't see how that opened that conversation.
I don't understand how that opened up that conversation and how it got them to the fact that they had to take the holiday or they were going to lose their time off. Right.
It kind of did tangentially because she mentioned her room was shit and then tried to transition it into who's your travel agent. And then they obviously would not have a travel agent because of their life. And so I could see them giving some jest about, no, we don't have a travel agent. We were just forced to take this because we had vacation. We're not going to lose it.
But yeah, I don't understand how, it seemed a fairly weak opening gambit. It worked. I mean, obviously it worked. It's scripted TV, but it did seem a fairly weak opening gambit. And then so the interesting bit to me, and the bit that stuck me in the beginning, as they were trying to set something up, was the fact that the wife, the person who is work is more important than life, kind of thing, who actually ends up being the murder victim. They set up so heavy-handedly that she cannot use a camera.
Oh yeah,
right, and that stuck with me so much. I was like, this is going to be relevant at some point.
I thought it was another half-assed attempt at physical comedy.
Oh, okay. Now I
about
looked.
Someone being just disconnected from reality. She doesn't know how to do normal people things.
I looked and I thought that's got to be important for some reason. And it turned out that it was, because it was basically the clue that Jessica Fletcher leapt on to work out who the murderer was. But no, so yeah, what I disliked about this episode is that you're spending the first 30 minutes trying to solve who and why is trying to gaslight the niece.
Yeah.
And that's not really the point of the episode at all.
It actually is still the underlying knowing, because it actually is the murderer who was doing the gaslighting.
Yes.
But his reasoning for it
But
just seems
again,
batshit.
why?
A very roundabout way to try and inherit millions.
Yes, which again, I didn't follow.
No.
Right? So, okay. If it had turned out that he'd actually killed Johnny, which is kind of what I was expecting, is that this was going to end up not being a suicide. Right?
I really expected that because, like, if she died with millions, it could be argued that her adopted child should be located, and if she died in poverty, no one gives a shit. It just doesn't happen. But if she's dying that wealthy, then there's a real chance that the executor of this state would say, hey, maybe the son's also, we know she has some biological heirs. We should find out who they are. And that would then give great reason for him to murder her as well, or Johnny as well. But no, we don't do that either.
Yes. So, but what I wouldn't understand is why the wealth would have gone to the wife of the son who is now dead.
The argument for that, so actually, they don't even set that up as in as her getting. They never even address the fact that the son, Johnny, could have gotten the wealth from this wealthy mom who gave him up at birth. The sole goal with that was to have the murderer set up the spouse to be gaslighting / fucking with the adopted child, or excuse me, the given up child, and in that, in their tortured soul of not knowing how to deal with their adopted child being abandoned and all that jazz, commit suicide. They wanted it to be for some reason, Miss Reed is completely off the hook, completely loosey-goosey, and trying to gaslight / fuck with her son and now daughter-in-law. It's weak. It's very weak.
Very weak in like just incredibly weak entirely. And I think that was the and it's not the first time that Murder She Wrote has done this.
It also starts a whole separate question, because at the beginning they mention that the mother had reached out to Johnny and then never showed up. It's obvious then that the husband, or the murderer, who married the mom, did this all of his own accord to try and get her money. How much had he been researching her life before he got married?
So I think this is the
How
thing.
else was he planning on getting the money?
I think clearly you're meant to think that he's been planning this for years.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if he's meant to be the PI who took the photos. Right. Because remember,
it would only kind of make sense though.
It would make sense that it was him, yeah. If he's hired a PI to do all of this research, presumably, because I don't think the woman actually ever looked up about Johnny, right?
I don't think so either.
But again, it's not clear. I think I don't think it's delivered very clearly. But yeah,
it's weak.
It yes, it is very, very weak. And I wonder if they knew that. I wonder if that's why they put in so much comic relief and fluff to try and make the episode feel, because the episode itself feels quite light.
Yeah.
Right? It does feel like you're watching a comedy episode, and especially with Jessica Fletcher doing her drunken acting at the end.
That was golden.
Right? Which was...
I enjoyed that more than I thought I would.
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. But like, it was so stupid.
Well, and even that, like, if you told me that was the evidence you had against me for being someone being murdered, I would have laughed. That's not evidence.
No, because I think there were two parts of evidence, right? She had a photo of something. I honestly can't remember what the photo was. Right, because she said that she'd taken that one of the photos that had been taken by the niece while they were on the boat, they'd got developed, showed something. Right?
I didn't catch that.
Because she was looking for the negative. She kept on saying something about, I've got the negative, you've got to keep the negatives and all this kind of stuff. And then the other main part of evidence, which I think she gives when they've actually caught the guy, is... Oh, no. He does say it, because it's the, what about the PI? She says something about what about the PI to him in that scene, because I know that she couldn't take a picture.
Right.
Right? Yeah. The evidence was incredible. And what I loved most, right, about that scene is you think your goose is cooked as the murderer, right? You've clearly got it in your mind that you're going to throw Jessica Fletcher overboard. Right?
Right.
Right. So you stop to put your coat on.
Yeah, that was weird. And also, why would you put on a red coat that now makes you stand out against God and everything? And also, why do you actually think you're cooked? What Jessica has is the lightest, weakest evidence.
Absolutely fucking nothing. Absolutely nothing, right? There is nothing that proves he fed the drug, because the woman is discovered in her bedroom. Again, committed suicide is what you're meant to believe. She's taken a drug overdose. Right?
I mean, I guess there would be enough. We're not going to say evidence but considering he's going to become filthy rich after that, any kind of evidence could at least be useful for pushing the investigation deeper. But I don't think
it may have been looked into, but again, I don't know.
That, then you have to say that, okay, all of this is related to the fact that she now has all these photographs. She's filthy rich. She could have hired a fucking PI. and on her own finances that were hidden away from them. That would be easy.
Yes,
No.
but even then, if she may have just been lying when she said she didn't know how to use a camera.
Or that.
Now, why she would lie at that stage about that, you would have to
Because
try
she
and
was
come
going
up with
to.
some kind of story. But
She really wouldn't, though, because it could just be that she didn't want. She was a good photographer. She had done all that, and she wanted to
she was
throw
just
things
hiding it.
off.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
to
because
the daughter-in-law that she hated.
because that is true. Because if you follow the logic, she would have known at that time when they were taking the picture who the daughter-in-law and presumably who Jessica Fletcher was as well.
Right. So it's just.
And again, I think they were trying to give you a clue fairly early on, because when they first sit down for the meals, that couple come over to Jessica Fletcher, and it's the husband who drags them over. It's the husband who knows who they are, or at least knows who she is. And the wife, the person who eventually ends up murdered, doesn't know who they are. I think they were trying to set something up there, but it didn't really land.
Because I didn't take it. I barely remembered her before she died because she just wasn't present.
She wasn't there. But that's the whole thing, right? They set up, like I said, there was one off the boat suspect. The only one that made sense to me, anyway, would have been the psychiatrist, right? And you would have then at some point had to have found him on the boat
and find a motive
for it to make sense. Yes, you would have had to try and find some motive, but the purser, I think it was, on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a very viable suspect.
I honestly thought that was. I was actually kind of happy with that because it would be intriguing. It would all fit. But
yes, it makes sense. She's forced her way onto the boat after Jessica Fletcher has got on it. The only thing that probably wouldn't have made sense is just how friendly she was. But then, if you've been planning this for a while, I guess that's something you can pull off.
Yeah, cool, calm, collected. I mean, come on, you're gaslighting someone.
And I don't think she ever actually interacts with the niece, right? She only ever interacts with Jessica Fletcher.
That's right.
Who you would imagine she doesn't actually have a problem with.
Right.
They just happen to be related by blood, right?
But you would have been hesitant to let Jessica take the letter that was for getting the wine for the room.
Yes. Yeah.
And another thing that stuck out to me like a sore fucking thumb, when they call to bring Jessica's niece to the bursar's office, the fax or whatever doesn't list calling her as Pepper. It says her name. It says Pamela.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that actually. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense then that they would call for Pepper.
Exactly. Well, and maybe that's just the advantage of being able to pause and rewind, because when things like that happen, I like to pause and read what it actually says. And I noticed it didn't say Pepper. It just said Pamela, her actual name.
Yeah.
And the line we hear called off is Pepper.
Yeah.
Which, by the show, I mean, that would literally mean that the purser had to know, or that the husband, I guess, broke in and made the call for her. No, because the purser knows it's there. She would have made the.
Yeah, she made the call because it was definitely it was the woman's voice over the tannoy. So unless the guy was also very good at mimicking voices, which apparently he's very good at mimicking handwriting, and I don't know if that's ever actually addressed.
Well, not only would he have to be good at mimicking her voice, he'd have to good at making her think she was the one who made the announcement, because she thinks she was.
Well, he's good at gaslighting. We know that already.
Not that good. Look, I've practiced it for years, and he's an amateur.
But yeah, and then I feel they clear her rather quickly, honestly.
Yeah, and they don't do anything to follow. Like she says, you can follow all these things up, and we know they're all going to be correct. They don't bother to show us any of that. Actually clearing.
But I think this is the problem, because it then switches to a murder investigation, and basically everything we've watched beforehand is now immaterial, really. Right? And just very quickly, I'm going to say within probably about 5 minutes, it goes from murder to end of show.
It's not long.
Right?
It's
And
at best one commercial break. At best.
And so everything that's happened before is a waste. It's meant to set up why he did it. But in my mind, and again, I was not paying full attention to the episode, I will be completely honest. But in my mind, it did not set up his reasoning that well.
No.
Right? I don't think it's ever explained how, unless he did murder Johnny, and I just completely missed that point, it didn't explain how he had become so good at copying his handwriting.
So originally it was going to be actually, yeah, that's a good point. Because initially it was going to be Johnny that he had be the gaslighting subject of his wife. But why then would he learn Johnny's handwriting?
Yeah.
Because learning his favorite meal would be enough to fuck with him, but learning his handwriting wouldn't be. Using someone's own handwriting to fuck with them doesn't make any sense.
The meal is the only thing they try to explain, why the brother's saying, oh, her house was broken into a couple of days ago.
Yeah, also that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, not really.
Did he break in to get them? I guess break in.
He
to
broke
get
in to get something, I guess, like try and learn something, and
but he would like you would have to. I guess he knew what the favorite meal was of the husband and had to break in to get the actual recipe.
I guess so. I think again, this is one of those episodes where the story they were trying to tell, you can't tell in 45 to 50 minutes.
They could have told it better if they actually did include that he killed Johnny. That genuinely would have made things
killed
wrap
Johnny.
Quicker.
I think, yeah. And if they'd spent, like, I would have much rather this one that the kind of setup had been rushed in the first 10 minutes and then a very slow burn reveal, right? Or unraveling of his plan. Because, yeah, there are things that still don't make a lot of sense. And yet the thing they catch them on is the fact that the woman is apparently not very good at using a camera.
Yeah.
Right. That's the big clue. That's the big gotcha moment. And
how well do you think that's going to go in front of a jury?
Exactly, right? And it is so... it was just so dumb.
For every instance we've had where the killer emotionally spills the beans to Jessica when they shouldn't have, this was somehow worse.
Oh, this is the worst one for sure. Now, you could say he never actually... he doesn't actually spill the beans as such. He is caught trying to put hands on who he thinks is Jessica Fletcher.
Right, but he has enough motive to go and try to
he has
kill
enough,
Jessica
but yes, that was
one shitty photo.
That was the mistake. Is he should have just stayed in his room and go, "What a stupid old woman." But so yeah, you're following the fantastically acting drunk Jessica Fletcher.
Fantastically,
really hammed it up. It was absolutely brilliant. Loved it. But then when you go to put the hands on, she's suddenly grown 2 foot.
Yeah. Okay. So that is easily argued by the fact he's coming down the stairs and doesn't actually.
Maybe.
No, even then, he's still. Yeah, you're right. That's like 2 feet. You would, though, in the heat of the moment at night.
You're probably meant to think, it is meant to be dark, and clearly he doesn't see everyone else who is around, so it must be dark.
Right.
Because there are a lot of people around watching to catch him in the act.
Part of me honestly wanted it to still be Jessica underneath all those clothes as she flipped him over her back. I knew it wasn't her when they did it, but I really wanted it to be her.
And again, it was one of those things where when they were setting up, because they have the niece and him talking to each other going down the stairs, and that's where they set up that he is good at karate or kung fu, which everyone is meant to be, but his black belt is a way off, right?
Yeah.
And you can put that down as just random courting conversation, right? But then it stuck out so much to me. There's like, well, how is this going to come into play? Is that what he used when he pushed her down the stairs? Like, were they trying to make him look guilty at that point?
Right.
But Also, I've just read this is the only time we see her brother.
Yes.
Very sad.
It falls right in line with using a new family member every episode that we never see again,
Yeah.
and somehow her family being larger than the Pacific fucking Ocean.
I mean, yes. Yes.
I mean, I come from a Catholic family, and I don't think there's even it doesn't touch the amount of family she has.
No. No. But yeah, like I think just as a passive thing to watch, I think this episode was more enjoyable. It had a lot of comedy moments, even though they don't make sense in the grand scheme of things. Leslie Nielsen, I thought was great. If
It
very,
was a fun episode,
very
not a
underused.
good episode.
Yes, it was a fun episode. It was a turn my brain off and watch a murder on a love boat episode. But yeah, when you actually think of the storyline, the plot of what was happened, it's probably one of the weakest we've seen.
Yeah.
But they did give Jessica Fletcher or Angela Lansbury a little bit of acting room, so I always appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Jessica was on the ball in this one. She was,
yeah,
and she would have been smart enough to see the photo of them. She would have immediately, her pegging him as, oh, he's the murderer because she's shit at taking photos. Jessica absolutely would peg that immediately. It just
I think
wasn't enough for her to.
The thing is, I pegged he was the murderer when he started to explain everything. When he's explaining it to the captain, where he's meant to be still, partially the victim, and you could tell even then that Jessica Fletcher was like, "No, this man is talking bollocks," and I was of the same opinion. This man is talking bollocks.
She had a feeling it was him, but the nail in the coffin for Jessica was the photography, and I could work with that, and I could appreciate that from her point of view, not the cops, not the juries. That was ample evidence that he's absolutely responsible.
And are we saying that either due to his pathological need to know everything about his wife, the son she knew about the son, but the son she gave up to adoption, which links to the niece, that's how they knew they were going on a cruise?
If he hasn't hired a private eye, and it's him that's being that neurotic into the son and or the niece, then he's. But also, how would he convince his wife last minute to hop on this cruise then?
I mean, I guess you're saying you've been working so much, we need a holiday. Guilt. But it does seem weird that you would try and do that in a couple of days.
Yeah, 4.
4
days.
That does seem unlikely. And then the other thing is, if she, and again, maybe they explain this more in the episode, I don't know, but if she isn't looking for the adopted son, and is therefore in her mind given him up, why would she mention it to this guy? Or did this guy just look for any dirt on this woman because he was always going to murder her?
That's my question. That's the only thing that to me properly makes sense, is either he had a feeling that she had a secret he could take advantage of.
But again, think about that and the wasted opportunity then, right? So what you're saying is you've got this fantastically evil, calm and patient villain, right? And the only place we see him as the villain is when he puts on his red coat and goes walking around the deck.
When he's talking to the picture too.
Right? But how much of a better story would it be to explore this calculating psychopath?
Yeah.
Right? Or if it is her who found the son, which is possible, and she's then put into the will that the money is going to go to my adopted son,
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the son she gave up to adoption, which again is very possible. She's clearly never had any other kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she's got a husband, but who gives a shit? I'm going to give most of the money to this kid I gave up because I feel guilty or whatever. Right? That would make sense. Then the suicide becomes way too convenient. Right? I still think they should have made that a murder as well. Honestly, I think
Johnny's that
would have made a much better story. And then again, he's copying the
could've burned
MO
through-
because he always, right? Because then you're saying he always dresses them up as suicides.
Yes.
Right? That's his
That
MO.
would be perfect.
Yeah. And it would have worked.
And it would mean you'd only need to spend, you could have spent like 15 minutes on the gaslighting half of the question, and then go ahead and just have her murdered early instead of this whole conversation about who is the adopted mother-in-law.
Honestly, I think the better story to me is if in the will, for some reason, she has set up that it goes to like the adopted son or surviving spouse of adopted son.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, that's hard to justify, but whatever. So then the whole gaslighting thing isn't just a gaslighting thing, it is an attempted murder. Right? Because if he wants to keep the money, he has to get rid of the son, the son's wife, right? And then the mother, who's got all the cash. Right? And that is an incredibly cold, dark, and calculated series of events.
And then the gaslighting would make sense for the fact that she's still crazy and then killed herself on the trip as well.
Yes, and also I think if you are certified crazy, you're not allowed to inherit. So again, it's another way of him keeping the inheritance to himself, and again shows how just cold and calculated he is willing to convince someone she's absolutely batshit crazy just to inherit a shitload of cash. What a much better episode! What a much better episode!
It would have been pretty dark too, though. I mean, I would have enjoyed it, but it would have been.
Yes, but again, I think if they're going to do these light episodes, you have to mix that in with some dark episodes.
Absolutely.
Right?
But were they willing to risk it in season 1?
I mean, I think they should have been.
I agree.
I mean, you would now, because you would have season 1 would have to be so much stronger than this season 1 has been to get a season 2, right? So I think you probably would make that risk now. But yeah, like to me, this is a classic. If you're going to have a mid-season break, right? Mm-hmm. To me, this is the perfect episode to split over 2.
Yes.
Right. Leave it on a cliffhanger, because then you've got an hour and a half to tell a really decent story. And I really think the first half, you kind of end where it ended this time, which is Jessica Fletcher is convinced it's the husband, but she can't prove it.
How's she going to prove it? Yeah.
And then the second episode is how she unravels the entire fucking mystery
of him killing 3 people.
Of him
killing
2 and trying to gaslight the other one, or possibly attempting to murder the other one, right? I think you've got a great, you've left it on such a cliffhanger, people are going to want to come back after the mid-season break.
Mm-hmm.
And then you finally got an opportunity to show Jessica Fletcher do real detective work.
Digging.
She
knows.
Yes, she knows that this is wrong. We know she's got a sense for the truth, right? Some kind of sixth sense that she can kind of pick up and know who's wrong. Like Columbo works on the exact same principle. Columbo always knows who the bad guy is, but he can't prove it right at the start. So he has to play along. He has to go and either find the evidence or get the person to slip up so he can then have his gotcha moment. Right?
Exactly.
And it is fun to watch. Now, maybe that's why they didn't do this with Jessica Fletcher, because they didn't want to make the exact same show again.
But they kind of already have. They have already said, because we've already, I talked about the time, or how at least in the first half of the season 1, she would magically at least know who was innocent.
Yes.
And
oh yeah, again, she's
someone to know who's the murderer seems to be better than knowing who's innocent.
She's definitely got the Columbo. Maybe she doesn't know who the murderer is, but she definitely knows when something doesn't add up.
Exactly.
Right. she knows when something feels a little bit hinky, to use a Scooby-Doo term. And yeah, I think it would have been, like I said, I think in this, it was the same with the when they set up that psychopath who wasn't actually killing anybody but loved older women.
Yeah.
Right, in that episode where they wasted, a great actor who really got under your skin, and a great possible story of how far would he be willing to go to force his way into Jessica Fletcher's life.
And it's tragic because they could have brought that back up a season later and gone with it, but we looked and no, it just dies.
I think it would have been great. I think that would have been great. Like every season, he pops up for an episode.
Yeah.
Right, because he's just doing something. You could have made that such an interesting through line, but yeah, like, and this one, I again, it's one of these episodes where if you're trying to put the story together after the fact, on what it was a very light episode, and I think they probably expect that you kind of vegged out and just went from A to B to C, and it's fine. You didn't think about it ever again. Which, if we weren't doing the podcast, is probably what I would have done. But when you actually start to think about this one, there is a good possible story there.
Yeah. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if we should write The Pit.
The Pit?
Yeah, that's a very right. I'm trying to do too much with one joke. If we should do a re-release of Murder, She Wrote, because it sounds like we can write decent episodes.
It would be...
Obviously, there's a whole lot more than that, but still.
No, this to me would be like... To me, this would be an interesting approach to a Murder, She Wrote remake. Is you take the episodes as they were on the original and you actually try to make them better.
Yeah, but then who's going to watch it? Because at that point, you've got the question of who has enough fond memory of Murder, She Wrote, but also would love to see it done in a bit darker, more deliberate.
Well, I think I think you would watch it because if you're new, you're selling it as a much better all round package, right? And you're not going to you're not going to know the storylines, blah 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 blah. If you're a real fan of Murder, She Wrote, right? And okay, it's going to lose some of its charm. It's going to probably lose because you've got to keep the lightness there. You've got to keep Jessica Fletcher being this, the character that she is.
You can still make the stories dark while having Jessica do the phenomenal acting she did.
Yeah.
The question is, who on God's green earth could you cast as Jessica Fletcher?
I don't know. I mean, in the modern environment, she'd probably have to be some kind of 25-year-old because that's when people are old.
I have a feeling you could actually go with someone relatively Jessica's age now, or Angela Lansbury's, because I think.
Well, how old would she have been when this was made? What, about 50, 60?
Oh no, she was roughly 80, dude. One of these days, you're just gonna hit me.
I was going to say, there's no way she was 80 because then she would have been about 120 when she died, and that is not true.
So she was born in 25, and this came out in 85. So just shy of 60, if my math's right.
Yeah. So 25. who is there now? Who is around the problem is 60 years old?
Everyone we know who's that age is probably entirely too big to have. I obviously like
Sigourney Weaver. I wouldn't watch it.
If I could spell.
I wouldn't watch it.
Oh wait, that Sigourney. I would watch it. I like Sigourney Weaver. I like her a lot.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
I think it'd make it interesting. Well, but Sigourney Weaver could also bring a bit of antagonism to it too. She's a smart woman. She's capable. She's known as being, her hallmark is the Aliens movie of being a badass bitch.
Yeah, and of course, she has the comedy chops as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though she's 75 already. Who's the other person you
Sandra
mentioned?
Bullock.
Yep. Oh. Sandra's got the comedy, but I don't know if I could take it. I've not really ever been sold on her comedy movies.
Courtney Cox is 60. And Friends killed Murder, She Wrote in the first place, so maybe there's a nice little bit of justice there.
Okay, that would be fucking funny.
Emma Thompson, she's English. I would watch that.
Oh, that would be a completely different take on it. Because Emma Thompson's quite young, isn't she? Wait, no, I'm thinking of someone else.
No.
Yeah, never mind. No, Emma Thompson would work.
Emma Thompson, I think, would work really well, actually.
Yeah, actually.
Elizabeth Shue is 61. There you go.
It's kind of, for someone like me who doesn't know people's names or faces, and I have the ability to Google everyone right now as you're listing them.
Yeah. Jodie Foster must be around that age.
Um, 62. Does she have the? Well, no, she probably does have the comedy chops. I'm trying to remember what movie I've seen her in though, where it felt like she knew how to do comedy, or does she just know how to make a dark situation?
I don't know if Jodie Foster has ever done comedy.
Yeah, but I swear in at least one of the movies I've seen her in, she knows how to at least be somewhat snarky back.
Oh, she's snarky, but
well, and that can work.
I think she's way too serious.
It would be hard with how serious she is.
As both an actress and a person to do that. So basically, anyone from Friends is going to be around the right age.
Yeah.
Get any of them in. Tilda Swinton would be a very, very interesting take on it.
I don't think Tilda Swinton would take it. Has Tilda Swinton ever been on a television show? She's always such an enigma.
I want to say yes. I don't know, actually. Maybe it is all just movies. I don't know.
She's always such a character. She's each person she plays is not a normal person.
No. And I think you can make that work for what is interesting, and I think this is such a contrast, right? You think Angela Lansbury at 60 years old picking up the role of Jessica Fletcher, right? She's old. This is at her twilight years, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's an author and she's going around. She's enjoying her twilight years, right? Some of these people who are around the same age now, if you put them in, you would not put them in as old.
Correct.
Right? Which I think is just Kim Cattrall. No.
It does look like Tilda Swinton was in a 6-episode miniseries called Your Cheating Heart back in 1990. But besides that, she's only had bit pieces in been in an episode or two of a show. Rather than
any of the women from Sex and the City could work, apparently.
Ooh, you did mention Friends, and part of me thinks Matthew Perry would just be a great shoe-in for Murder, She Wrote.
Matthew Perry has the same problem as Angela Lansbury for being in a reboot of Murder, She Wrote.
What's that?
They're both dead.
Oh, wait. He is?
Yes. That's Chandler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he drug overdose or something like that?
2023, so I don't know, but yeah. I did not realize he was dead.
Yeah.
He was 54.
That would be an interesting one. Megan, what is her surname?
Well, I know it's not Fox because that just would not work.
That would be funny. I think we could do a pitch around that one. Honestly, that would be funny. But
I could.
Megan Fox could be the niece, and we just have one niece who is the most unlucky person because everyone she knows gets murdered. No, she's married to Ron Swanson. Oh, what is he called? What's his name?
His name is Nick Offerman,
Nick Offerman.
and
His
it's his real life
wife,
wife.
real life wife. Yes, it's like Mullen in the knee or Mulhaney or something like that.
Megan Mullany.
Yes,
Mullally.
she could definitely do it.
I don't think I. Wait, she was in Will and.
She was in Will and Grace. She was the over the top boss or friend or something like that.
I actually never really watched Will and Grace, but it has such a similar name to Dharma and Greg that I immediately always think about that, and I did watch some seasons of that. There's one episode of Dharma and Greg. Greg's a lawyer, and they happen to run into someone out and about, and they're just trying to be lighthearted and fun, and so they pretend to be Southern and run into another Southern gentleman, and then that Southern gentleman ends up being a judge in New York where they are, and they've pretended to and sold being Southern. And the judge then comes over, and they're trying to offer him food, but they say, "But we don't have any grits. Greg ate the last two," as if grits isn't a porridge, and it just tickled me. As someone from the South, them having absolutely zero concept of what grits are, or that you could fucking count them.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no. I thought a grit was like some kind of biscuit.
It's not dissimilar to porridge and or oatmeal.
Gotcha.
It's not the same, but it's.
But no,
similar.
I think if you're gonna do it and you're gonna try and keep, I think Emma Thompson.
Well, so you mentioned niece, and actually, the person or the main character could be Jessica Fletcher's niece as a bit, and it could be rolled into the fact that holy shit, that family was huge. Like canonically, have it be Jessica Fletcher's niece.
Oh, I mean, yes. I mean,
That'd be hilarious.
Took over the writing business and just took over the pen name of J.B. Fletcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do that. But yeah, like I said, this to me the story was weak. I enjoyed the episode overall.
Yes.
Because again, I think it was a light watch. It had a lot of comedy moments. Angela Lansbury was allowed to muck around and have fun in it, and I think you could tell she was having fun in it as well.
Yes.
You know, Leslie Nielsen, I think, phoned in his performance.
Yeah.
But
part
it's
of me
still
thought, is this some of his early career, because he just didn't seem to be putting forth the Leslie Nielsen effect. It felt weak.
It did. Like I said, I think he probably just phoned it in, whether he's doing it as a favor for a friend or what. But even with him phoning it in, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you know, when Jeremy Irons played the bad guy in the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Not the recent one. The one with the Wyans. Right? He phoned that in, and you can tell he phoned that in, but it's fantastic.
Sometimes someone phoning it in can be quite golden.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone. I really do like, though, when a high-level celebrity gets involved in a smaller project just for the fuck of it. I quite enjoyed in the first Deadpool that the Vanisher was Brad Pitt. And he's literally only seen for the second of being electrocuted.
Yes. Yeah.
That amused me greatly.
Yeah, no, it is. It is funny. But yeah, I think that you could have done so much more with this story.
Yeah.
Than they did. And like I said, I don't think it's explained well what his motivation was or what he even gained from it, really.
It's in there. It's just very. There are points, but they're not well-connected points.
Yes.
They're established as fact because he says them, but it's fucking weak.
And then the guy who actually played the murderer, I thought was the weakest actor in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which didn't... Like, the niece I thought was quite good.
Yes.
With the whole going crazy thing. Captain I thought was good. Yeah, the guy who wants to show you his hoochie coochie. Annoying, stereotyping. But yeah, but he committed. I enjoyed it. The secretaries I thought were quite good, even though pointless.
And the bursar, the woman who was
Yeah,
kind of the secretary of
I
the
thought
ship, was
was
great.
good as well. The bland love interest I thought was incredibly bland, and the love interest.
Yep.
For the niece, everyone else seemed to do really well, but then the actual murderer.
How much? So the woman who was murdered, the wife.
Yes,
I don't even feel like I remember her really being in the episode because
she wasn't. So she appeared. She appeared at the start to take a photo.
yeah.
There was the scene where she was basically standing next to the husband while he was talking to Jessica Fletcher at the dinner table.
And then she's dead.
There may have been one more scene where they're on the deck after the niece has been gaslit the first time. I seem to remember seeing them both on a sun lounger. But again, I think it's the husband that does all the talking. And in all fairness, it may be a completely different character who I'm thinking of. But yeah, then she's dead.
I will say, it did take me. The ship that they were on seemed. Of course, they actually do then explain why it's an older ship that they've brought back into service.
Yes.
I was just surprised to see a smokestack ship.
I think it was the Queen Mary, wasn't it?
Yes, it almost certainly was the Queen Mary, but the Queen Mary actually was out of service by 1967.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm also going to say that they only filmed the deck parts on the Queen Mary because those cabins seemed very big.
Yeah, and the hallways.
Yes. A lot of.
And on a ship.
Maybe, I don't know. It was a ship that would have been. I think, was it designed for the royalty, the Queen Mary? I think so. Maybe that's what it was like. But yes, modern cruise ships definitely not like that. But yes, yeah, weak episode, weak story that I enjoyed.
I don't think the Queen Mary was actually built for royalty. I think it was just because, especially if it was, I wouldn't expect it to be permanently docked at a U.S. port. It was the RMS Queen Mary, but
yeah, because somebody brought it, and then it was a restaurant in America for a long, long time.
I think it still is. Oh wait, no. It was reopened, maybe.
Oh no, does just say it was an ocean liner.
By November, the city had spent $2.8 million for plumbing repairs, a new Wi-Fi connection, handrail, energy-efficient light bulbs. After the ship opened for limited tours on December of 2022, public opening in April of 23. It might still be open.
Maybe. But yes, it was yeah.
It was an interesting episode.
Yeah.
It had some fun, but it had some serious holes.
It did, and again, I'm interested to see if at some point they just decide to concentrate on the fun and the kind of murder mysteries just go to the wayside. Because what they don't seem to be able to do at the moment is mix the two together well.
Correct.
Right. I mean, one, I don't think they've done a particularly good mystery yet all the way through, but
we did have some interesting stories.
Yes,
with some major plot holes.
I think they need to. It always seems to me that the more interesting stories are when they show Jessica Fletcher as more of an idiot. Right? And then in the episodes where she's allowed to take... I do wonder if there was a lot of arguing behind the scenes, if Angela Lansbury was maybe a little bit of a diva on this show and wanted to make Jessica Fletcher her own. Maybe they were arguing a lot. I don't know. But to me, the episode where she is allowed to just have fun and shine and play with the scene and do what she does best, they're really good. The ones where she's kind of almost sidelined in a way, I think, are the ones that don't work. And I think it's because your real selling point in Murder She Wrote, because you don't have co-stars, you've got no growing story, no growing relationships. Your only real draw to Murder She Wrote, if the mysteries themselves are going to be shit, is Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, you've either got to have good. I would really love to have good mysteries and good acting from Angela.
Yeah,
That
so
be
would I.
great.
But at this point, I feel that may be asking a little bit too much.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. I always ask too much.
But maybe after 12 seasons, maybe they get there.
I'm starting to wonder if we should set up the second podcast, where you watch from the last episode back towards the first, and when we meet in the middle.
Night, we struggle some weeks to record one podcast episode. I think. I mean, and as you know, I can't keep track of which episode we're on now.
Oh God, yeah.
put in that I'm meant to be watching 2 episodes.
And trying to do one of them backwards. I mean, I bet you can't even read the ABZs backwards.
I mean, okay, if you're actually saying we have to watch the episode backwards as well, I'm more in.
Oh God,
I'm more in than I was before. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sold.
You say that, but I think after the first 2 episodes of literally trying to watch it in reverse, you'd just be too annoyed to continue because it's kind of useless. It's like 45 minutes of what the fuck is this?
I'm gonna make a prediction. Well, I don't know, actually. I'm going to assume by season 12, they're probably off the boil. Right? So probably season 12 is probably not their best episode. But you have to imagine at some point there is a season where, or a run of seasons where it feels like classic Murder, She Wrote.
We should hit that bare minimum by season 3.
I'm going to say, and maybe we should try this, a good Murder, She Wrote episode watched backwards is probably better than anything we've watched so far.
Taking an episode and playing it from the conclusion of the episode back to the beginning with all the audio in reverse is better than the episodes we've been watching.
Yeah. At 2 times speed.
I don't think I have... I can do the suspension of disbelief for the forward, but backwards, I'm not sure I can keep it. It would be funny, but I don't think I would enjoy it.
That's fair. That's fair. But no, I do wonder if it would be a more enjoyable 45 minutes than some of the episodes we have watched forwards.
Yeah.
I really do. But
and it's so frustrating because we keep seeing opportunities for gold.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing. I think they really need to decide what it is they want to do with the show. Do they want to do really deep mysteries? Because if you're going to do the deep mysteries, you have to have Jessica Fletcher showing us how she's working it out.
Yes.
Right? You can't just have these sudden gotcha moments and then it's only explained at the end. Right? Because what they're not good at so far, what they're not good at is giving you the clues that you need to pick up on, right? So you can try and get there yourself, right? And in this episode, you couldn't have done it anyway because the murder doesn't happen until about 5 minutes before the end. Right? So... Yeah.
Even if you write off the murder and just say, okay, the main mystery of the episode is who would be there to gaslight, trying to be confident on which woman would be the mother is still not very well done. And then we immediately transition that into...
No, and it's only explained and found out that she's the mother because she is murdered.
Right. Well, and all the because the pictures wouldn't have been found unless she was the mother.
No, and I'm assuming the pictures were placed there by him because he was the one who took them, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, in this episode, they never solved the first mystery, which is who was gaslighting her, really. Right? And even the opening gambit of, oh yeah, Johnny told me once that he was adopted.
Yeah.
Seemed a little bit weak and convenient.
Yeah.
I believe it. I think that is something you would tell your spouse, assuming he knew.
Part of me wants to say, why would he be so cagey about his past? But also, for mid '80s, it being an adoption, the stigma around that has just definitely reduced.
Yeah, and again, like I said, would he even have known he was adopted?
Considering the stigma, most parents wouldn't have told him. So
Yeah, so the whole thing from start to finish is weak, but with just a little bit more care and attention and thought, you could have told a really good story on this boat. God, I hope they get there at some point.
Same.
But anyway, I think that's about all we can talk about this episode for. Chat. Oh, no, this isn't chat. This isn't chat. This is the podcast. This is.
This is whatever the fuck we want it to be.
This is whatever the hell
this is my ship now.
We're not. Yeah, this isn't me streaming. This is we're doing Cabot Cove Chaps. I said chaps, not chat.
4K no los dos. Really go for some steak.
Yeah, I need to get to the shop so I can buy myself some food.
Why do you do this?
What do you mean?
We've all got to go, ladies and gentlemen, because cake.
We do.
Needs to eat some fucking cake.
No.
Boy.
No, we're ending the episode because there's not a lot to talk about on this episode.
Boy.
All right.
Boy.
There's no ring. It just keeps on saying goodbye.
Boy.
But yes, hopefully back next week.
Boy.
I'll take that bye as a yes. And yeah, I'm kind of stretching this out because Knight just sounds annoyed that I'm keeping it going now.
Boy.
Boy. You sound like a seagull from bloody Finding Nemo.
Those say mine.
They did say mine, but use your imagination.
Hello.
Oh no, now I'm confused.
So am I.
Are you gaslighting me? Welcome to the episode where we're talking about.
We're talking about Johnny and his troubles and tribulations.
We're talking about Johnny and the fact that he calls his wife Pepper for some reason.
Right.
And that he likes to have, what was it, honey on his chicken? Yeah. Mustard? Whatever the fuck it was.
Walnuts inside of it. But, no, there was mustard. There were walnuts. I don't remember honey.
But anyway, yes, that is going to do it. I hope you enjoyed. And we'll be back with the next one when we're back with the next one. Bye for now.